It began with a whisper in the hangars of Republic Aviation, a rumor that would soon shake the very foundations of aerial combat and redefine what a fighter could achieve. A whisper that spoke of a man, an engineer whose reputation teetered on the edge of brilliance and madness. A man whose obsession with aerodynamics and raw mechanical power would produce a design so unorthodox, so audacious, that the world would later look back in disbelief and marvel at the result. For it was not merely an innovation, it was a gamble against conventional wisdom, a challenge thrown at the gods of aviation themselves, and the prize was nothing less than dominance over the skies at speeds previously thought unattainable for a single-engine fighter of its size and weight. And at the heart of this story was the P-47 Thunderbolt, a gargantuan aircraft bristling with armament, armored to endure punishment that would crumble lesser machines. Yet historically criticized for its perceived sluggishness and ponderous frame, a plane that, on paper, seemed destined for mediocrity. And yet it was precisely this very frame, this immense fuselage, this overbuilt, seemingly lumbering design that became the canvas upon which the engineer would paint a masterpiece of mechanical audacity. And from the moment he first twisted a propeller blade at a radical angle, ignoring the whispers of his peers who called the idea foolish, insane, even stupid, the fate of the Thunderbolt changed forever. Because in his mind, every curve, every pitch, every twist of the metal was a note in a symphony of speed, a dance with physics that would turn the P-47 from a heavy brute into a machine capable of slicing through the air at 470 miles per hour, a velocity that left friend and foe alike gasping, a speed that demanded respect, a velocity that, in practice, defied every expectation and surpassed every rival aircraft of the time. And the story of that transformation is not merely a tale of raw numbers, but of a philosophy, a relentless pursuit of efficiency and power, a belief that the right combination of propeller pitch, engine torque, and airframe strength could transcend the limits imposed by traditional design principles. And it was in the early 1940s, amidst the escalating chaos of World War II, that the engineer began his work, quietly at first, almost surreptitiously, experimenting with prototypes in the shadows of Republic Aviation's testing grounds, running engines to their maximum output, adjusting the propeller pitch in increments that seemed infinitesimal, yet were monumental in their impact. Each test flight revealing new insights, new variables to consider, as the roar of the radial engine echoed across the tarmac and left onlookers in awe, witnessing machines that seemed on the verge of flight and yet trembling on the brink of destruction. And as the planes took to the sky, the subtle changes in the propeller design became apparent. The Thunderbolt's climb rate improved dramatically. The acceleration, once sluggish, now became ferocious, and every maneuver demonstrated that the aircraft's handling, once thought cumbersome, now possessed an agility that contradicted its bulk, a testament to the genius hidden within what many had dismissed as folly. And this transformation did not happen in isolation, for alongside the engineer's radical ideas, a team of test pilots, brave beyond measure, pushed the P-47 to its limits, experiencing forces that would leave lesser men incapacitated, feeling the vibrations of the engine through every fiber of the airframe, testing the harmony between power plant and propeller, measuring thrust against drag, documenting every nuance, every anomaly, and in these countless hours of high-stakes experimentation, patterns emerged. Correlations between propeller blade angles, engine RPM, and aerodynamic efficiency that had never been fully understood before. And it was this painstaking attention to detail, this relentless obsession with variables most would ignore, that unlocked the secret to transforming a heavy, seemingly ungainly fighter into a high-speed predator of the skies, a plane that could dive faster than most contemporaries, climb with surprising vigor, and unleash a hailstorm of 50-caliber bullets with devastating accuracy. And yet the true genius lay not just in achieving speed, but in maintaining control at these unprecedented velocities. Because in the world of aviation, raw speed alone is meaningless if it cannot be harnessed. If the pilot cannot command the machine with precision, and so the engineer, guided by intuition honed through countless calculations and flight tests, designed the propeller in such a way that it not only extracted maximum thrust from the massive R-2800 engine, but did so in a manner that preserved stability, that kept the aircraft responsive, predictable, and deadly in the hands of a skilled pilot, and as these modifications were refined, the Thunderbolt began to earn a reputation that would echo across both Allied and Axis intelligence reports. A plane feared not just for its firepower, but for its ability to appear suddenly, strike with lethal speed, and vanish before the enemy could respond. And in this context, the so-called stupid propeller trick revealed its brilliance. For by altering the blade angles to a configuration that defied conventional aerodynamics, the engineer unlocked a synergy between airframe and engine that allowed the Thunderbolt to accelerate faster in dives, maintain higher speeds in level flight, and resist compressibility effects that plagued other fighters of the era. And the pilots who first flew these modified aircraft were initially skeptical, hesitant to trust the new design. Yet after repeated sorties that demonstrated performance far beyond what charts and simulations predicted, skepticism turned into awe, into unreserved confidence. And the stories of near-miraculous maneuvers, of Thunderbolts outrunning Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs alike, began to circulate among units in Europe and the Pacific theaters, tales of aircraft that seemed to bend reality, defying expectations of weight, inertia, and drag. And all of this stemmed from the audacity to challenge established norms, to question assumptions that had held sway for decades in aircraft design schools. Assumptions that dictated how propellers should be pitched, how engines should be mounted, how airframes should behave under stress. And by daring to ignore those limitations, the engineer did not merely create a faster plane. He created a paradigm shift, demonstrating that innovation often resides where fear and ridicule once dominated. And as production models rolled out with these revolutionary propellers, mechanics and engineers scrambled to understand the underlying principles, trying to reverse engineer the magic that had transformed a lumbering fighter into a speed demon. And in doing so, they discovered the subtle interplay of rotational inertia, torque distribution, and airflow dynamics that had been overlooked by many contemporaries. The kind of insight that can only come from a mind willing to see beyond convention, willing to risk failure on a massive scale for the chance of a breakthrough that would alter the course of aerial warfare. And while enemy designers continued to rely on traditional wisdom, the Allies gained a weapon that combined survivability, speed, and firepower in a way that few could counter. A plane that became a nightmare for Axis pilots who found themselves outpaced, outmaneuvered, and outgunned at altitudes and velocities they had never expected. And yet, for all its performance, the Thunderbolt retained a human dimension. For the pilots who flew it felt a bond with the machine, a sense of trust that could only arise from the intimate understanding that the aircraft, no matter how radical its design, would respond faithfully to their commands, translating their instincts into motion at 470 miles per hour with deadly precision. And this story, beginning in the dimly lit hangars, amidst the clanging of metal and the scent of aviation oil, is a story not merely of a plane, but of vision, courage, and the audacity to defy expectations. A tale that underscores the truth that innovation is rarely safe, rarely comfortable, but when it succeeds, it reshapes history. And as the P-47 thundered across the skies of Europe and the Pacific, it carried with it the legacy of one engineer's crazy idea, a legacy that turned ridicule into triumph, doubt into certainty, and an ordinary fighter into a 470 MPH beast that would leave a permanent mark on the annals of aviation history. And as the first sorties returned, pilots reporting their astonishment and commanders recognizing the potential, the world began to understand that sometimes what appears foolish, what appears reckless, is precisely the spark required to ignite extraordinary achievement. And in that realization, the P-47 was no longer just a plane. It was a testament to daring, a monument to ingenuity, a machine whose story would captivate, inspire, and haunt the imagination of anyone who dares to fly against the limits of what is possible. And the suspense of what came next, the further refinements, the ever-escalating battles in the skies, the terror and exhilaration of facing enemy fighters all hung in the air like a taut wire, ready to snap, ready to propel the viewer, the listener, the historian, and the enthusiast alike into the next chapter of this extraordinary saga where every twist of the propeller, Every calculation, every test flight, every minor adjustment carried the weight of destiny and the potential to redefine what a fighter could achieve in the crucible of war. And this is only the beginning. For the story of the P-47 Thunderbolt, its pilots, its battles, and the mind that transformed it from a lumbering brute into a speed monster, is a tale that will unfold in layers of technical brilliance, human courage, and the relentless pursuit of excellence that would ultimately make history. And as you stay with me through the next segments, you will witness the unfolding drama, the incredible feats, and the astonishing truth behind the crazy propeller trick that made a legend soar at 470 miles per hour, faster than anyone dared imagine, faster than anyone believed possible, a testament to the extraordinary impact of daring ideas when coupled with courage, skill, and relentless innovation. As the first modified Thunderbolts rolled off the assembly lines, the atmosphere in the test hangars was electric, charged with anticipation, disbelief, and a cautious optimism born of months of secretive experimentation. For the engineers, pilots, and mechanics who had labored tirelessly knew that this was no ordinary machine, that what they held in their hands was a radical departure from accepted aviation norms, a fusion of brute mechanical power and intricate aerodynamic mastery. And when the first pilots climbed into the cockpits of these newly configured aircraft, strapping themselves into the padded seats and checking instruments that would soon reflect unimaginable stresses, they could feel the weight of history pressing against their shoulders, a silent understanding that what they were about to do would be written into the annals of aerial warfare if successful, or dismissed as a fool's errand if it failed. And as the engines roared to life, a deep, visceral vibration coursing through every rivet and panel of the airframe, the pilots could sense that the modifications to the propeller, though invisible to the naked eye, had transformed the heart of the machine, turning the radial engine's raw horsepower into an orchestration of controlled chaos, a symphony of thrust, torque, and lift that demanded respect and mastery. And as the Thunderbolts taxied onto the runways, the first liftoffs were tentative yet electrifying, each climb revealing subtle changes in performance that validated months of theory and trial and error. For the modified propellers, with their radical blade angles and unconventional pitch, had begun to exhibit behaviors that defied prior expectations, enabling the aircraft to accelerate more rapidly in level flight, maintain higher speeds at varying altitudes, and dive with a stability and control that previous iterations of the Thunderbolt had never achieved. And the pilots, initially skeptical, began to push the machines further, performing rolls, dives, and sharp banking turns, feeling the aircraft respond with an almost uncanny precision, a mechanical intuition that mirrored their own instincts. And it was in these moments, soaring thousands of feet above the ground, that the genius of the propeller design became undeniable, for it not only amplified the engine's power, but harmonized it with the airframe in a way that distributed forces evenly, minimized drag, and allowed for sustained high-speed maneuvers without compromising structural integrity. And yet these test flights were far from comfortable, as the pilots were subjected to extreme G-forces, vibrations that rattled every panel, and engine temperatures that flirted with the upper limits of safety. But each sortie produced invaluable data, revealing the thresholds of the Thunderbolt, charting the envelope of its capabilities, and giving the engineers tangible proof that their radical concept was not just viable, but revolutionary. And the meticulous records kept by test pilots documented every nuance of behavior, from subtle changes in roll responsiveness to minute variations in thrust during rapid climbs, forming a comprehensive understanding of how the propeller interacted with airflow at different speeds and altitudes, a level of detail that would later inform combat tactics, maintenance procedures, and further refinements. And as the weeks turned into months, the test program expanded, incorporating multiple aircraft with varying propeller configurations to determine the optimal balance between speed, maneuverability, and engine longevity, for the goal was not merely to create a fast plane, but to produce a fighter that could dominate the skies in any theater of war. Whether in the high-altitude dogfights over Europe or the low-level strafing missions across the Pacific Islands, and in these testing campaigns, pilots began to share anecdotes that would later become legendary within the Air Force, describing moments when the Thunderbolt's sudden bursts of speed allowed them to evade enemy fighters, or when the aircraft's stability at extreme velocities permitted precise strafing runs that previous fighters could not accomplish without risking structural failure. And the combination of the propeller innovation with the massive R-2800 engine produced a synergy that seemed almost supernatural, an invisible hand guiding the aircraft through the sky with deadly efficiency. And ground crews, mechanics, and engineers, watching the planes perform, began to understand the subtle brilliance of the adjustments, noting how minor changes in blade pitch translated into significant improvements in climb rate and acceleration, a testament to the meticulous calculations and the engineers' deep understanding of aerodynamics, physics, and material science. And as the test pilots continued to push the Thunderbolts to their limits, new insights emerged about the aircraft's performance in extreme conditions. From high-altitude thin air to the dense, humid environments of tropical islands, and these insights informed both tactical deployment and long-term maintenance, ensuring that the aircraft would perform reliably under the harshest combat conditions. And what truly set these Thunderbolts apart was not just raw speed, but the intuitive feel the pilots experienced, a sense that the aircraft responded to even the slightest input with predictable, precise motion. A responsiveness that transformed what was once considered a lumbering plane into a lethal predator in the hands of skilled aviators. And as the word of these capabilities spread among squadrons preparing for deployment, morale soared, for pilots understood that the combination of firepower, survivability, and newfound agility provided them with a decisive edge over enemy fighters. An edge born from the audacity to challenge conventional wisdom and the meticulous execution of an unorthodox idea. And in the cockpit, the experience was exhilarating and terrifying, for every flight demanded mastery, discipline, and an unshakable trust in the aircraft. Trust that was earned through countless hours of testing, observation, and adaptation. And the engineer who conceived this radical propeller design continued to refine the calculations, consulting with aerodynamicists, metallurgists, and test pilots to push the boundaries even further, analyzing every flight log, every vibration reading, every engine temperature spike to extract lessons that would make subsequent production models even faster, more resilient, and more deadly. And through this iterative process, the Thunderbolt evolved from a promising prototype into a weapon capable of altering the balance of power in the skies, a fighter whose impact would be felt not just in the immediate combat theaters, but in the broader strategic calculus of the war. And by the time these aircraft reached operational units, the pilots were not merely flying machines. They were commanding extensions of the engineer's vision, translating radical theory into practical dominance, a real-world manifestation of audacity and precision. And as these Thunderbolts took to the skies in combat for the first time, the results were dramatic, shocking enemy pilots and commanders alike with a combination of speed, durability, and firepower that defied expectations. And the anecdotal reports from initial missions told of engagements where Thunderbolts could dive into combat, deliver punishing strikes, and climb away before the opposition could react, effectively rewriting the tactical playbook for fighter operations. And every success validated the countless hours of experimentation, the skepticism overcome, and the brilliance of a single engineer who had refused to accept the limitations imposed by tradition, choosing instead to envision a machine that could defy norms and dominate in ways previously unimaginable. And this segment of the Thunderbolt's story is a testament to human ingenuity, to the relentless pursuit of performance, and to the power of daring ideas executed with skill, precision, and courage. And as the viewer follows this journey, they will witness the unfolding of technical mastery, the drama of test flights, and the exhilaration of pilots discovering the true potential of a 470 MPH monster born from a crazy propeller design. A story that continues to unfold in the subsequent points where innovation meets combat reality, strategy meets execution, and the Thunderbolt's legend is forged in the crucible of wartime skies, leaving an indelible mark on history and inspiring awe, respect, and an enduring fascination with the combination of human genius, mechanical innovation, and the relentless pursuit of excellence that made the impossible possible in the theater of World War II aerial combat. And this is only the second chapter in a saga that will take the viewer deeper into the technical brilliance, Operational triumphs and human drama that define the extraordinary story of the P-47 Thunderbolt, its pilots, and the audacious engineer whose crazy propeller design turned a heavy, lumbering fighter into a speed monster feared across continents and celebrated in the annals of aviation history. As the modified P-47 Thunderbolts were deployed to active combat units, the tension among both Allied commanders and frontline pilots was palpable, for months of testing, calculations, and daring engineering were about to face the ultimate trial in the unforgiving theaters of World War II, where the air was thick with danger, enemy fighters patrolling with lethal intent, and every sortie carried the possibility of death or glory. And yet the pilots, who had trained extensively with the Thunderbolt's new propeller design, entered the skies with a quiet confidence born of intimate knowledge of their aircraft's capabilities, understanding that the radical changes to the propeller, which once seemed so audacious, now granted them an unparalleled advantage, allowing them to climb faster, accelerate with ferocious speed, and maintain control during dives and maneuvers that would have unbalanced or overstressed earlier models. And this combination of speed, power, and resilience quickly translated into tactical dominance as P-47 pilots began flying combat missions, escorting bombers, engaging enemy fighters, and conducting ground attack sorties, often in situations where survival seemed improbable, and the results were nothing short of extraordinary. For reports flooded command centers detailing encounters where Thunderbolts outpaced Luftwaffe Messerschmitts, dodged anti-aircraft fire with precision, and unleashed devastating firepower with an accuracy that turned previously fortified targets into rubble, demonstrating that the crazy propeller design was not merely a technical curiosity, but a battlefield game-changer, a strategic advantage that would influence the course of engagements across multiple theaters, and pilots quickly adapted tactics to exploit this newfound capability, learning to dive at higher speeds, climb rapidly to intercept enemy aircraft, and maintain formation integrity even under extreme stress, all while knowing that the aircraft beneath them had been engineered to withstand the forces generated by its unprecedented velocity. And as missions progressed, first-hand accounts from pilots illustrated the profound impact of the propeller innovation, with descriptions of dogfights where the Thunderbolt's acceleration allowed them to enter combat, engage and disengage at will, leaving adversaries scrambling to react, often with catastrophic results. And these accounts, once debriefed and analyzed, revealed patterns that informed broader tactical doctrines, emphasizing high-speed engagement, rapid altitude transitions, and concentrated firepower, all enabled by the harmonious interplay between engine, airframe, and the revolutionary propeller, and ground crews, observing returning aircraft with engines still glowing from extreme exertion and airframes bearing the scars of close encounters, marveled at the resilience and reliability of machines that had previously been thought incapable of sustaining such operational intensity, and their meticulous maintenance logs became critical in understanding how the propeller modifications affected engine wear, torque distribution, and aerodynamic stresses, ensuring that subsequent missions could be flown with confidence, minimizing risk of mechanical failure and maximizing the effectiveness of each sortie. And the psychological impact on both Allied and Axis forces was significant, for German pilots soon realized that the Thunderbolt was unlike any fighter they had encountered, a lumbering-looking aircraft that, in reality, possessed the speed, maneuverability, and firepower to dominate engagements, leading to tactical adjustments, cautious approaches, and even outright avoidance when faced with squadrons of P-47s, a testament to the strategic ripple effect of a single engineering innovation. And historians later noted that the introduction of the modified Thunderbolt fundamentally altered the dynamics of air combat, forcing enemy commanders to rethink formation strategies, interception timing, and engagement thresholds, as the 470 MPH capability, achieved through a radical propeller redesign, reshaped the very calculus of dogfights, strafing runs, and bomber escort missions, and within the squadrons. Pilots began developing an almost intuitive understanding of the aircraft's capabilities, exploiting dive speeds to escape pursuit, climbing sharply to gain tactical advantage, and coordinating attacks with unprecedented precision, a coordination made possible by the predictable behavior of the aircraft at extreme velocities. And as the war progressed, the Thunderbolt's reputation grew, with stories circulating of pilots entering combat knowing they had a decisive advantage, executing maneuvers previously considered impossible, and returning with both mission success and personal survival. The combination of confidence, skill, and technological superiority creating a synergistic effect that magnified the aircraft's impact far beyond what raw specifications could indicate. And the engineer who had conceived the radical propeller design, though physically distant from the combat zones, followed every report with rapt attention, each sortie serving as validation of his daring vision. Each anecdotal account from the front lines confirming that what had been dismissed as foolish experimentation had become a cornerstone of Allied aerial supremacy, and intelligence officers meticulously documented the outcomes, noting kill ratios, mission efficiency, and survivability, all metrics that pointed unmistakably to the effectiveness of the design. And as these findings were analyzed, tactical manuals were updated, training programs adjusted, and new pilots briefed on the Thunderbolt's unique capabilities, ensuring that each generation of aviator could harness the full potential of the radical propeller configuration. And the interplay between pilot skill, mechanical reliability, and aerodynamic innovation reached a crescendo in missions where Thunderbolts faced overwhelming odds, executing coordinated attacks against enemy formations, drawing fire, evading counterattacks, and delivering decisive blows that turned the tide of engagements, all while pilots marveled at the aircraft's responsiveness, a responsiveness that allowed split-second adjustments to evade damage, maintain formation cohesion, and execute offensive maneuvers with lethal precision. And the engineering team continued to refine the propeller design based on these operational lessons, integrating feedback from pilots, data from maintenance logs, and performance metrics to enhance reliability, efficiency, and combat effectiveness, demonstrating a dynamic feedback loop between theoretical innovation and practical application, where each mission informed incremental improvements, and the Thunderbolt's dominance became both a psychological and tactical phenomenon, inspiring confidence among Allied aircrews and fear among enemy pilots, who learned that the appearance of a P-47 in the sky often presaged a confrontation where speed, firepower, and durability would leave them at a decisive disadvantage. And as the months of deployment turned into years, the Thunderbolt's impact was measurable not only in mission success rates but in strategic outcomes, enabling bomber formations to penetrate enemy territory with reduced losses, providing effective ground support for advancing troops, and asserting control over contested airspace in ways previously unattainable. And throughout this period, the underlying genius of the radical propeller design remained at the core. The seemingly small yet transformative adjustments to blade pitch and aerodynamic profile, manifesting in real-world superiority that reshaped tactics, boosted morale, and cemented the P-47's status as a legendary fighter, a machine whose legacy was inseparable from the daring innovation that had unlocked its true potential. And as historians, pilots, and engineers would later reflect, the story of the Thunderbolt's wartime performance is a story of vision, courage, and the extraordinary results that can emerge when audacious ideas are executed with precision, determination, and unwavering attention to detail. And this chapter in the saga sets the stage for the subsequent points, where further refinements, tactical evolution, and the human stories behind the machine deepen the understanding of how a crazy propeller design not only produced a 470 MPH monster, but changed the very nature of aerial warfare in World War II, a story that continues to enthrall, inspire, and illuminate the boundless potential of ingenuity meeting opportunity in the crucible of combat. As the P-47 Thunderbolt became a fixture in the skies over Europe and the Pacific, pilots quickly discovered that the radical propeller modifications did more than simply increase speed. They fundamentally altered the relationship between pilot and machine, creating an almost symbiotic connection in which every control input, every instinctive maneuver was amplified and translated with precision. And these experiences gave rise to countless first-hand accounts that would later become legendary within aviation circles. Stories that detailed hair-raising dives through flak-filled skies, rapid climbs to intercept enemy fighters, and split-second evasive maneuvers that left adversaries bewildered and often out of position. And in one memorable engagement over the Ardennes, a squadron of Thunderbolts faced a formation of Messerschmitt Bf-109s attempting to intercept a returning bomber stream, and the P-47 pilots, fully exploiting the enhanced acceleration and dive speed provided by the redesigned propeller, executed a series of high-speed dives that allowed them to engage the enemy on favorable terms, firing with devastating accuracy before using the aircraft's unmatched climb rate to ascend above the chaos and regroup for successive attacks. And as the skirmish unfolded, German pilots reported encountering an aircraft that seemed to defy conventional expectations, capable of appearing and disappearing at will, striking with lethal precision and vanishing before a counterattack could be mounted. A phenomenon that rapidly became known among Luftwaffe units as the Thunderbolt Ghost, and the psychological impact of this reputation was profound. For Allied pilots approached missions with renewed confidence, trusting that their aircraft could withstand extreme forces, while enemy aviators approached engagements with trepidation, aware that their standard tactics were often ineffective against a machine that combined bulk, speed, and resilience in unprecedented ways. And within squadrons, pilots began developing highly refined techniques that leveraged the propeller's advantages, learning to time dives to maximize acceleration, coordinate climbs to maintain altitude superiority, and execute rolls and turns with a precision that earlier models could not sustain at comparable speeds. And these tactical refinements were not merely theoretical. They were battle-tested under the harshest conditions, often while under intense anti-aircraft fire or facing multiple enemy fighters simultaneously, and the courage and skill required to exploit the Thunderbolt's capabilities were matched by the aircraft's own reliability, the propeller modifications ensuring that engine torque and thrust were optimally distributed, minimizing the risk of structural failure and allowing pilots to push the machine to extreme limits without fear. And these extreme maneuvers, documented in after-action reports, illustrated a pattern of operational superiority that transformed how missions were planned and executed, with commanders increasingly relying on the P-47 to provide not only bomber escort but close air support, reconnaissance interdiction, and rapid response to emergent threats, all while pilots honed an intuitive sense of how to manipulate the aircraft in ways that maximized both offensive and defensive potential. And in individual accounts, pilots described the thrill and terror of high-speed engagements, feeling the aircraft respond instantly to their every command, banking sharply to avoid incoming fire, diving to escape pursuit, and then accelerating with astonishing speed to re-engage from an unexpected angle, creating a sense of tactical unpredictability that confounded enemy formations. And the psychological toll on Axis pilots was notable, as intelligence reports began to describe increased caution, hesitation, and even avoidance when confronted with Thunderbolts, a phenomenon that underscored the combination of mechanical innovation and battlefield psychology. For the aircraft's reputation alone began to influence combat outcomes, with pilots sometimes disengaging purely out of fear of the machine's capabilities, and within Allied units, the shared knowledge of what the propeller modifications allowed reinforced cohesion, trust, and morale, creating a culture in which pilots felt empowered to attempt daring maneuvers, confident in the reliability of their aircraft, and in the performance edge provided by the engineer's radical design. And beyond individual engagements, the Thunderbolt's abilities influenced broader tactical doctrine, prompting refinements in formation flying, interception strategies, and coordination with bomber streams. As commanders sought to maximize the advantages conferred by the aircraft's speed, climb rate, and durability, and as pilots accumulated experience, a library of maneuvers emerged, from high-speed slashing attacks to rapid altitude changes and precision strafing runs, each designed to exploit the combination of propeller innovation and engine power. And these tactics were shared, practiced, and refined, producing a level of operational sophistication that further amplified the Thunderbolt's effectiveness, a synergy between human skill and mechanical engineering that became increasingly evident with each successful mission. And as the war continued, pilots from both sides began to recount the almost supernatural qualities of the aircraft, describing its ability to absorb damage, maintain control under extreme conditions, and accelerate in ways that defied expectation. And the collective impact of these capabilities became apparent not only in mission success rates, but in the broader strategic landscape. As Allied air superiority grew, enemy forces were forced to rethink approaches, adapt tactics, and, in some cases, retreat from areas where Thunderbolts dominated, all driven by the unassuming brilliance of a propeller redesign. The kind of innovation that initially seemed foolish, yet ultimately redefined aerial combat. And these accounts, recorded in official reports, memoirs, and oral histories, reveal a consistent theme: that the integration of the radical propeller with the P-47's formidable airframe and engine created an aircraft that was not only faster and more maneuverable than anticipated, but also psychologically transformative, instilling confidence in Allied pilots while sowing doubt and fear among adversaries. And the personal stories of heroism, skill, and daring that emerged from these engagements illustrate how the aircraft's capabilities allowed ordinary men to achieve extraordinary feats, from evading numerically superior enemy formations to delivering decisive strikes against strategic targets. And in every instance, the lessons learned reinforced the critical interplay between mechanical innovation, pilot expertise, and tactical execution, demonstrating that the Thunderbolt's success was the product of both brilliant engineering and human ingenuity, a combination that ensured that each mission further validated the audacity of the original design. And as these narratives were passed down through training, operational planning, and historical documentation, the Thunderbolt's legacy became inseparable from the radical propeller that made it possible, a story of transformation, empowerment, and battlefield supremacy, where the human experience of flying at extreme speeds, performing daring maneuvers, and confronting mortal danger merged seamlessly with the technological mastery that had enabled such feats. And as viewers of this saga will come to understand, the psychological, tactical, and mechanical aspects of the Thunderbolt service reveal a layered, multidimensional portrait of innovation in action, a testament to what can be achieved when bold ideas are executed with precision, courage, and relentless attention to detail. And this chapter, filled with high-stakes encounters, split-second decisions, and the awe-inspiring capabilities of a 470 MPH machine, sets the stage for the next point, where production expansion, mass deployment, and the refinement of operational doctrine further solidify the Thunderbolt's role as a transformative force in World War II aviation, leaving viewers on the edge of their seats as they continue to witness the extraordinary story of a plane, a propeller, and the human determination that turned a radical idea into a legendary instrument of war. A tale of speed, skill, fear, and triumph that resonates across history and remains a defining example of ingenuity meeting opportunity in the crucible of combat. As the P-47 Thunderbolt's legacy reached its zenith, the culmination of years of daring engineering, exhaustive testing, and relentless combat experience converged to cement its place as one of the most formidable fighters of World War II. For by this point, the aircraft was no longer merely a machine. It was a symbol of innovation, audacity, and the transformative power of a single radical idea, the crazy propeller, design that had defied conventional wisdom and turned a lumbering fighter into a 470 MPH monster capable of reshaping the aerial battlespace. And the operational lessons gained from thousands of sorties across Europe, the Mediterranean, and the Pacific had revealed the full extent of the Thunderbolt's impact. From its unparalleled survivability under withering fire to its ability to execute precision ground attacks and dogfighting maneuvers that had previously been the exclusive domain of lighter, nimbler aircraft, and pilots who had once approached the aircraft with cautious optimism now spoke with reverence, recounting encounters where the propeller's radical design allowed them to climb faster than enemy interceptors, dive with extraordinary acceleration, and maintain control at extreme velocities, effectively rewriting the tactical playbook and instilling a level of confidence that transformed operational doctrine. While enemy pilots, encountering the Thunderbolt in multiple theaters, consistently reported experiences that bordered on disbelief, describing an aircraft that appeared to defy physics, striking with lethal efficiency and vanishing before retaliation could be mounted. a combination of psychological intimidation and mechanical superiority that multiplied the aircraft's effectiveness beyond raw numbers. And as mass production scaled, thousands of Thunderbolts were deployed with standardized propeller modifications, ensuring that the advantages achieved in experimental and initial operational units were realized across squadrons worldwide. A feat of logistical coordination, manufacturing precision, and continuous refinement that reflected the dedication of engineers, mechanics, and aviators alike. And in the skies above Normandy, the Ardennes, the Philippines, and countless other battlefields, the Thunderbolt's performance consistently exceeded expectations, supporting ground troops, escorting bombers, and engaging enemy fighters with devastating success, the aircraft's speed, firepower, and resilience becoming a cornerstone of Allied air superiority. And historians later analyzed the cumulative effects, noting how the radical propeller design not only enhanced individual aircraft performance but altered strategic outcomes, allowing bombing campaigns to proceed with reduced losses, enabling rapid response to emergent threats, and asserting dominance in contested airspace in ways that previous fighters, regardless of pilot skill, could not match. And the human stories intertwined with these technical achievements are staggering. From young pilots experiencing their first taste of combat in a machine that felt almost alive, responding instinctively to their commands, to seasoned veterans pushing the Thunderbolt to extremes, executing split-second maneuvers under enemy fire with confidence derived from both skill and the unparalleled capabilities of their aircraft. And these narratives, collected in flight logs, memoirs, and oral histories, illustrate a profound interplay between human courage, mechanical innovation, and tactical genius, demonstrating that the Thunderbolt's success was not solely due to horsepower or design ingenuity, but also to the meticulous training, adaptability, and bravery of the pilots who transformed potential into operational reality. And as the war drew to a close, the enduring impact of the P-47 and its radical propeller design became clear, influencing post-war aircraft development, inspiring new generations of engineers and pilots, and leaving a blueprint for integrating radical innovation with practical application in aviation, while the original engineer, whose audacious idea had sparked this revolution, became a figure of legend, celebrated not only for technical brilliance, but for the courage to defy convention, risk professional ridicule, and pursue a vision that ultimately saved countless lives and contributed decisively to Allied victory. And the Thunderbolt itself, with its massive fuselage, powerful engine, and now iconic propeller, stands as a testament to the extraordinary results that can emerge when daring meets meticulous execution, when imagination is tempered by rigorous testing, and when human ingenuity pushes beyond the boundaries of what is accepted. And as viewers reflect on this saga, the suspense remains palpable. For every flight, every maneuver, every engagement tells a story of tension, risk, and triumph, keeping them on the edge of their seats, imagining the roar of the engine, the pull of extreme G-forces, the sudden appearance of enemy fighters, and the lightning-fast decisions required to survive. And in this final chapter, the narrative crescendos with an understanding that the Thunderbolt story is not merely historical, but a lesson in creativity, audacity, and the transformative power of bold ideas executed with precision. And as the screen fades to black, the audience is left with the lingering sense of awe and suspense, the knowledge that a single engineer's crazy propeller trick turned a heavy, underestimated fighter into a 470 MPH monster that dominated skies, reshaped tactics, and secured a legacy that will inspire for generations. A story that closes with both resolution and the lingering thrill of what might have seemed impossible, leaving viewers mesmerized, contemplating the boundary-pushing courage that turned theory into reality, and the echoes of roaring engines, precision maneuvers, and daring flights resonate in the mind long after the tale ends, ensuring that the P-47 Thunderbolt and the genius behind its radical propeller remain immortal in the imagination of anyone who witnesses its story. A perfect fusion of suspense, drama, and historical triumph that commands attention until the very last second and beyond.